So we're going to get right into our very first topic. So this is Redfin says Warren's housing plan would help millennials buy homes. So as we know, everyone in the world is running for the Democratic nominee, and Elizabeth Warren has been, I think, trying to get some extra attention on herself, and basically came out with a plan to encourage people to buy more homes. One of the biggest issues is that right now it takes an average of 12.9 years for millennials to save up to purchase a property. One of the biggest factors there is because of student loan debt. And I guess her whole proposal here is to eliminate student loan debt to allow millennials to save up faster and buy a property. Now,
and specifically to eliminate student loan debt by forgiving it, or basically, pardoning the debt. And like Mark was saying, there's a lot of different. In fact, how many candidates are currently running right now?
Everyone in America.
Everyone in America. Yeah, there's a lot of candidates. I forget. I think it's like 64 or something like that.
Yeah, 75, something
or
like
75.
that. It's crazy.
And so, point behind that is that I think a lot of them are coming up or creating different platforms to help distinguish themselves from the other candidate. Whether or not they can actually execute on the promise, because obviously politicians are always known for making a promise, over promising and not actually delivering. Like, for example, I'm not for it, but Trump never delivered the wall that he wrote his platform on and got him essentially elected. I think a similar situation here in Elizabeth Warren's proposal.
Yeah, so her proposal would basically eliminate student loan debt. It would forgive it, completely wipe it out, and it would take the average 12.9 years in order for a millennial to save up and buy a home down to about 9 years. Now
9 years is still a long time.
It's a very long time, and I think they're missing a few key factors with this plan. Number one, when you think about having to save up for 9 years to simply buy a home, it's still daunting. It's still overwhelming. And for many people out there, 9 years is just as much as 12 years. And I don't think it's really going to do much. And then secondly, you're basically forgiving student loan debt, wiping out this debt. And that's a big problem, because you have to understand who actually owns this debt, who actually lent the money out.
Yeah, and again, to put things in context, people go to college, they get student loans. Now, student loans all on its own without this particular plan already has a very, very high default rate. In fact, I know some individuals who want to raise funds to basically bet against the fact that student loans will default because that default rate is so high. Now, in a plan like this, which sounds really great on a political platform, like, oh, I'm going to encourage education by saying, hey, Mark, the money that you loaned me for student loans, Elizabeth Warren says it's completely forgiven. And I know that for most people looking at this, sounds like a great plan. Hey, let's forgive the student loans. But essentially, you're encouraging students to default on their loan. And when you look at where the source of funds are, most of this money comes from these student loans come from various places like the savings that we put in or other institutions where the individuals who are putting deposits in are into various lending institutions. That money is being lent out to the public to create an interest rate and a return that pays everybody else back. Long story short, I think it's a bad idea after actually reading the whole plan, and it doesn't have a whole lot of substance, especially because it starts off immediately by encouraging somebody to default on a loan, which essentially says that somebody else that made the loan or somebody else's money that put up the money to make the loan is getting not paid back.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about what's going to happen if all of a sudden people are able to take out a student loan, and then after they graduate, they can simply have it forgiven because they're now going to buy a home. Well,
and not to mention, there's really no way to empirically track or mandate that somebody go buy a house, because guess what? You don't owe any more money on your student loan. Great. I think I'll go buy a house. That doesn't necessarily work out that way. Many times that individual who is probably defaulting on their student loan probably wasn't going to buy a house in the first place, in my opinion. They'll probably go on vacation with the money that they didn't have to pay back.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we as a country have put ourselves in a very tough spot here, because after World War II, everyone pushed so much for college education, college, college, college. That was the thing that was so ingrained into our society, and it became a massive business. You saw the cost of education just skyrocket simply because the demand skyrocketed. Why did the demand skyrocket? It's because it was easier to pay for college,
Yeah.
and that's because of student
I mean,
loans.
the bell just went off, and long story short, I think it's a bad plan. I think Mark thinks it's a bad plan as well. It's just a way to get attention, to potentially garner votes, to distinguish yourself amongst all the other candidates that are running. And not to mention, the final point is that it doesn't necessarily make somebody buy a home. And it doesn't even address the simple fact that education right now is a bit of a scam because of the cost entailed with getting higher education. Not that higher education is bad, but just the amount of cost to get higher education, that in itself should be corrected. And there's so many other ways that could actually encourage higher education at lower cost of students than simply forgiving or encouraging defaults on loans.